Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I wanted to say that before I forgot. You guys can see we got a couple extra co-hosts tonight. Jeff and Eric are with us.
Hey, Jeff here.
Hey, Dan.
I think we got one more coming on. I think Greenhorn Dave's getting on too. He just hasn't gotten on yet, so we had to start without him. But
I haven't seen you guys in a couple hours.
It's been a minute. In the time I saw you, I made some fresh backstrap on the grill tonight.
Nice.
I don't think I've ever grilled it so fresh.
Oh, heck yeah.
Fresh
Well, that's a good sign then. If you guys got some fresh venison to grill up tonight.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk about, these guys have been hunting together all week, so we were going to get on and just, I don't know what's going on up in Wisconsin, so I'm pretty well blind like the audience is, so figure just getting a conversation about what you guys have been up to. But first, we were going to talk about like some news stuff that came out in like the hunting world that just has happened just really since gun season has came about. But it's all seemed like it happens up in Wisconsin every year for some reason. It's like every time I hear like a horror story about hunting, it's like up in whatever Green Lake County, Wisconsin. You know, it's just like anyway. There was a. Did you guys see the article about the kid that got that giant buck stolen off their property?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And that thing was a giant too.
Oh, it was a big deer.
Yeah.
It had like all kinds of kickers and a drop tine.
I thought I read it was his first deer.
You know what the good thing is? He took a picture of it after he killed it, but then he had gone back to the house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to get the stuff to go fetch the deer, or whatever. It was on his own property. And he come back and the deer's gone.
Yeah, it sounded like him and his dad maybe been hunting together, and they went to get his grandpa or something, and get stuff to get the deer and take care of it, and got back and it wasn't there. But they got it back pretty quick though. Like, seemed like there wasn't much details in the article about how they got it back, but it was shared on Facebook a whole bunch of times, and then.
Anybody who steals a trophy deer is stealing it to brag. So when they brag, they're going to get caught, because nowadays that's like wildfire. And I think that person didn't realize that the person had pictures of that buck.
Yeah,
because a picture of antlers is so identifiable.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it wouldn't take very long, I guess, for that to come out in this world, at least. You know, it's like it's on social media and stuff. So.
Yeah, I heard it was shared over 4,000 times on social media.
Yeah. We got to add Dave now.
I just don't understand. Hey, Dave.
You're on mute, Dave.
I don't understand the purpose behind stealing something like that, because, I mean, what do? You take that deer head home and what do you tell your friends that you shot it and brag that you shot it, and you got to come up with a story and
Yep.
You know, where do you get any kind of pride out of something like that? It just
some people are prideless.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom. It really is.
Yeah, I bet he felt pretty bad too when he found out some boy shot it for his first buck, you know.
Yeah.
I shot a really big 6-pointer one time, and I was in a drive with a friend invited me, and I didn't know anybody else. and a guy in the drive unloaded on it after I shot it. I shot it through the chest, and he hit it in the leg, and it ran out in the field. He ran over and claimed it.
Really?
Yeah, it was a really big six. It was like 130s.
Oh, geez. Hey, Dave, you're on mute. I see you keep talking. I don't say anything.
Life's better when Dave's on mute.
There you go. We just don't tell Dave the entire show, and he just sits there and talks, and he's like,
This might be the first time I've seen Dave without a hat on.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah, he looks weird. Put a hat on.
Just better.
There you go.
Anyway.
There you go.
Yeah,
I have hair though.
Hey, easy.
Not much.
I had something. My very first deer I shot when I was 9. It was a pretty nice deer. It's actually right. Let's see here. This one right here. It's all busted up, and the mount's whatever 23 years old now. But it. I shot it, and a guy after I shot it, a guy sitting like 100 yards from me shot it as it was running by and rolled it. Luckily, he was like very like he's like I just shot it again because I didn't want you to lose, and I ended up hitting it really good. It just was he wasn't very far from me, but I had a kind of a scare. I can remember that pretty vividly when I was little. Obviously, my first deer, but it was all good. I mean, I hit him right in behind the shoulder, and he hit him right here in the neck. So I could imagine what that little boy was feeling when it was actually gone.
I have a similar story. It wasn't like quite like the buck that this kid shot, but it was the first deer I had ever shot. It was just over 3 inches on the antlers, so it was legally a buck. And I was on public ground, and I had another hunter approach my stand, and he said, "I heard you shoot. What did you shoot?" And I explained it to him, and that was my first time actually ever tracking a deer. And I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing, and this guy, he walked me along with him. We tracked that deer, and at the time I think I was 13 years old, and we found the deer, and the guy was real grizzly, big guy. He had a huge beard, and I'm 13 years old, and he goes, I found this deer. This should be my deer, he says.
Really?
Because he found it, and that was pretty intimidating to me as a kid. So
yeah, because at 13, what are you going to do to him?
Right. Yep, he was probably 6'2" and a large beard and just stocky as can be. So anyway, I thought I'd just share that.
Serious?
But
was he serious?
He was serious. Yep.
That's weird. That's weird to like get you down. I thought like your story didn't end how I thought it was going to. I thought he was like going to I thought he was a nice guy that was helping you.
Yeah, like mentoring you.
Yeah, right. Give you a life lesson.
Not turn out like that. It was an odd situation.
Oh, that would be weird when you're young.
Does anybody know you're hunting out here?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be just thrilled. That's the first deer I ever shot. I ended up taking them home, so we got that all worked out. But
so it wasn't like the movie Airplane where he asked if you like gladiator movies.
Oh man, you guys, that went over my head. That must be
that
must be like an 80s movie or something.
It was.
Okay.
All right, Josh, you got to put that one on your watch list. Airplane.
It's pretty funny. It is pretty funny.
anyway.
But yeah, so we had, I don't know how much y'all got into it, but we had a good time today.
We're doing news right now, Dave.
Okay.
We'll get to it, Dave.
Sounds good. Well, it was fun. Huh? There's your intro.
We'll get to it.
Anyway, so that was one story we were going to talk about. So another one, this isn't a news story, didn't come out in the news or anything, but we had a comment on one of the videos this week. There's a guy from Ohio that was hunting some public land. And Ohio, it's bow season still. But anyway, he was sitting there. He wasn't very far off the road. I think he said
he said he was hunting like one of those like overlook spots right alongside the parking lot.
Exactly. Yeah. And heard a vehicle pull up, in the parking lot. And shortly later, he heard 2 gunshots. And then that was the end of it. And he, you know what? Maybe it is gun season in Ohio. I don't know. Either way, got done hunting, went back to his truck, and someone shot both his tires out.
Yeah, he said he heard people talking. They got out of their car, they were talking, then he heard them shoot, and he was like, "What are they shooting at in the parking lot?"
Yeah.
And then he didn't think nothing of it. He blew it off, and then he came out. I mean, he was really close, you know, and he probably could have ran out there and caught the guys, but literally, I don't know if you want to catch them because
right.
that's a pretty shady person. I mean, you can spend time in prison for doing something like that. So obviously, those are some pretty bad dudes.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why, right? Was it, oh, you're in our spot, or were they? And there's just so many people can be just such wackos these days for a whole bunch of reasons. But it's kind of better that maybe it was better that he was by his stand if they were just, who knows?
You know, a lot of guys are putting trail cameras over their vehicles now.
Are they really?
Yeah, that's a common thing now.
Yeah, you can. I think you can get ones for your vehicle too, just like a motion censored camera that pops on if something happens, or if it's something, if your vehicle like shakes or something like that. But yeah, I couldn't imagine it. The guy, you could tell in the comment, he was very frustrated because it didn't sound like maybe he'd been hunting that much or whatever, and now he has 2 blown tires that he has to spend whatever. What are tires right now? He probably has to spend freaking $500, $600 for 2 tires
easily. Yeah,
depends on the vehicle. Yeah, but yeah, at least $200 probably.
If you're driving a pickup, it's going to be
a pickup.
Yeah.
What's also terrible about it is you only have one spare, so you can't even drive home.
Yeah, they must have been calculated about what they were doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you guys had anything weird? Go ahead, Dan.
When I shot the Rome Legend buck, that was I think that's the buck. It was my second buck of the year. I'm not sure if that was the one or not. I think it was, because it was earn a buck back then.
Mm-hmm.
So you could shoot multiple bucks by having shot multiple does. So I shot 2 bucks with my bow, both good ones. And 2 guys approached Carol, my wife, while she was shopping and at a gas station, and threatened harm to her, and said they were going to come burn the house down and stuff. And I mean, had her cornered, and she called me up in tears, and I was like, call the police, you know. And I tried to run over there, but she's too far away. But I mean, people get weird over hunting spots and stuff, you know.
Yeah, pretty possessive.
That made me so angry when that happened, you know.
Yeah,
probably a good thing I wasn't close by, because I'd have probably got myself in trouble.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it make you turn red. Did have you guys had? I was getting ready to ask this question. Dan kind of already answered. Have you guys had anything like that happen to you guys, like bad experiences in parking lots or while you're out
messing with the
around?
vehicles or anything?
Yeah,
I can't say I really have.
No, I've never really had that happen.
I haven't either. I have a friend here locally that they were on a hunting trip, and someone broke into their trailer that they were using to haul their gear and stole the whole trailer. All 4 of I think there's 4 of them, all 4 of their bows, all 4 of their stands, every single piece of the trailer got loaded up in the back of a truck or something, and they took off.
Wow.
Broke into it.
Yeah.
That'd run a trip pretty quick.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, so I haven't had a lot of weird things. I mean, I don't run into all that many people. If there's a parking lot in an area where it's kind of defined, I'll just move on, right? And I won't try to do that. Most people generally are pretty respectful of that.
Yeah.
There was actually one guy that it was weekend before gun season. Someone pulled in and left, you know, when they saw me there, but another guy pulled up, and then we wound up talking. He wound up recognizing the bee stand. He was like, "Hey, you got a bee stand," and all that kind of stuff. And he even, you know, said, "Oh, weren't you in some video?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been in a couple of videos." But it's kind of funny how people see that stuff. And he was an older guy, probably. I forget what he said. He'd been hunting in this one area for like 35 years or whatever. He was checking a camp. So it's like, you know, you might run into freaks, but then you do run into good people too. So it's easy for those bad guys to stand out, but there's also real good guys too. I think the guy's name was Greg.
What happened to Miles Keller?
Mm-mm.
Miles Keller was going to a deer show. Now this is back quite a ways, but at the time he had the world's record for the most Pope and Young bucks, and he was taking his deer heads to a show. And while he was in the show registering, somebody stole his trailer full of deer heads, and he never ever got any of them back.
Oh, it's terrible.
I talked to him after that, and he had said that the authorities thought because he was down in Texas or something like that, they thought that they stole it for smuggling across the border because they kept stealing trailers for that, and they probably just dumped the heads out in the desert someplace.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lifetime of hard work, blood, sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in those days, nobody did replicas and stuff like that too.
No. Well, unfortunately he was the one that helped teach him that they should use replicas, right? You need unfortunately, a bad experiences where.
Right. Yeah, but nobody's gonna replicate a 135-inch. If it's just a Pope and Young buck.
Exactly. Yeah, true.
But anyway, yeah, that
bad.
would suck. That would suck bad.
Yeah.
I haven't had many bad experiences. The only thing I've had happen is like a particular area around here. There's a guy that had like a permanent stand on public that was not very far from the parking lot, and he would sit there and he would like act like, and this is like 1,000 acres, and he would sit, in the first 30 acres of the place, and like he would get so upset about people walking through there. I'm like, dude, you can't put a permanent stand right here and kind of think you have blocked the rest of the 970 acres that are here.
We ran into that guy the other day.
Oh, really? But yeah, he had a big ladder stand out there, and I was just like, oh my gosh.
We were coming out of the woods, and there's a hiking trail put through the woods for the public to hike on.
Yeah.
And the guy was sitting on the hiking trail hunting and got upset because we walked past him and stormed out of the woods. But he was probably a much better hunter than all of us because he had a deer picture on the side of his truck.
Yeah, right. He left at prime time too. I mean,
yeah, he stormed out of there, and it's not like we did any damage. We just walked past.
Me and Eric were just talking. It's like a road, right? It's not a trail where you think of like a walking trail, right?
Yeah, it's
wide. It's fully gravel. You could fit any one of our vehicles on it. That's how wide the thing is. And he was literally like 2 feet off of it. Me and Eric are sitting there talking away, and it's like, oh, there's a guy there.
He just came storming out of the woods.
Yeah, he gave the stink eye over in our direction. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he didn't look too happy.
No, but he left. What time was it? That was like 3:30, right?
It was at closing time. Yeah.
I don't think we ruined his hunt any more than he did by the spot he was sitting.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't ideal.
Yeah.
No, and unfortunately, the more time you spend in that spot, you're like, okay, well, you just want to tell people like, I know you're sitting in here. I'm sure you're enjoying it, but like, you really don't have a chance.
Yeah. Anyway, there's one more story that came out this week, and it was then we'll get into the deer hunting stuff, guys. But it was a sad one, man. Like I think, and this was in Green Lake County, Wisconsin. Someone shot a 11-year-old boy when their hunting party inside of their pickup. Whenever they were there was some kind of a unloading of the firearm, and the firearm went off, shot him in the chest through the back. Isn't that right, Dan? Dan read a different article than I did. It sounded like
there was another article that came out that said the details more, because when the first article came out, I was wondering, how do you sit in the back seat unloading a loaded firearm and discharge it through the chest of the person sitting next to you? I was like, that doesn't even sound possible. It almost sounds like it was intentional. But it turns out that the kid wasn't in the vehicle. He was outside of the vehicle, and the guy shot through the door and hit the kid in the chest. And they didn't say how related, but it was a family member.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was literally inside of a vehicle after a hunt, unloading his rifle while sitting in the vehicle.
That's unbelievable.
You wonder what goes through somebody's mind, packed in a vehicle trying to unload a firearm. And now he's got to live with that for the rest of his life with a family member, and he's got to live with his family members after doing that. And it's just the whole thing is just tragic. I mean, stuff like that shouldn't happen.
No, I mean, you can never be careful enough. I mean, your mind should always be where is that muzzle pointed, and quite honestly, I don't have I don't turn the safety off until I'm ready to pull that trigger, and I make sure of that.
I'm the same way, Eric.
Yeah.
And if I don't pull it, the safety goes right back on.
Yeah, those are the things you have to do. If you forget to flip the safety and you miss a deer, that's worth it, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like that's a mechanical device. Like that gun needs to be unloaded whenever you're back at the vehicle, and especially if
absolutely.
if you got a bunch of kids,
it's supposed to be unloaded before you're even to the parking lot.
Right.
You know, if you're on public, and I mean, if you're at your property before you're in the vehicle, I mean, you don't get in a vehicle with a loaded firearm. Period.
And not to mention even just muzzle awareness, right? I mean, if you're doing anything right, it should be pointed at the ground. It's you know, they seem like such basic things, and they generally are. Maybe this person did it in the excitement of the hunt, they just forgot. But I mean, you just can't make those mistakes.
No.
You know, I was never a fan of hunter safety. I always figured everybody knew enough to be safe. But literally, when they started doing hunter safety in Wisconsin, the accident numbers went down so dramatically that it obviously makes a difference.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you from my experience having my two sons, Dan, you know, both, they both went through it, and the group that handled the hunter safety class, they had the students handling some form of a gun every single day in that class, whether it be a shotgun, a rifle, a handgun. So they got used to each type. They had one guy had lever action, another guy had a pump act, and my kids both handled every gun in there, and they're very safe when they're handling them.
Yeah. Yeah, you need that.
Yeah, you never know
guide.
what kid mentors are too. So I mean, the hunter safety probably really is a good thing. I mean,
yeah, they get some good guys from what I've seen personally.
Well, and you know, with hunter safety too, sometimes you have a kid that wants to hunt, but his dad maybe didn't hunt or his grandpa didn't hunt. Who is he supposed to learn from if he doesn't have a mentor?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So in that situation too, I think hunter safety is a great thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it is. It sounds like, though, in this case, it was just a complete negligence, right? I mean, that's the only way you can put it, is for why it happened, or what was behind it. Could have all the knowledge in the world, but it just make, you know, one or two dumb mistakes, and you change history for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, ruin a lot of people's lives.
Yep.
My uncle had this has been not that long ago, a few years ago, but he had a 30-06 that somehow the safety malfunctioned, and he was walking through the woods or through an open cornfield, and like with the sling, a gun over his sling, and his gun went off, or gun over his shoulder with the sling, and his gun went off and fired in the air. And my dad actually fixed the gun for him, but it was like there was something wrong with the safety. It was like doing something and caused it to, I don't know what happened. But you just never know. You can't trust any of that stuff. You got to be like Dave said, like muzzle awareness is like so important, because, you know, he could have been, who knows, you know, you don't know if that would have went off at the right time when someone was around, or, you know, luckily he was just pointing, you know, straight up in the air is not the most ideal place to throw a bull either. But it's like, man, at least he was by himself, and there wasn't, you know, he wasn't someone behind him or something, and he had it lower than he should have, or something crazy. But anyway,
be safe, people.
Yeah, we want to talk about that one because it's a hard one to talk about. It sucks. It's
For
bad,
sure.
but it's like it's good for people to hear those stories when they happen, because it's like that could have been anybody, you know.
Yep.
I'm sure that feller that shot that kid probably wasn't expecting to do that day, you know.
Right.
Anyway, all right, that's enough of the newsworthy stuff. I think that's kind of fun to do that. We should do news stuff more often. We had that idea at one point in time, kind of got away from it, mostly because we were busy hunting and stuff. But maybe if you guys comment sometimes, if you hear something good that you want us to talk about, or think it'd be good newsworthy stuff in the hunting industry, let us know. Anyway, so what you fellers been up to?
We've been
deer driving,
drowning our friends.
Yeah. water
we
rescue.
did deer drives today. It was a fun time. We only got one done. We intended to do 3, but it takes Dave 6 hours to set up a tree stand.
No, 5.5, Dan. You're exaggerating.
5 million hours.
Yeah, we put up a lot of deer in that drive, but we kind of expected that. We saw that a lot were going in there in the snow. We just didn't have enough people to do it. And I know we didn't see all the deer. I mean, because way more we put up than came out. And generally the ones that get away are the big ones. We just need more guys to push this stuff. I mean, 5 guys on a very large piece of structure to drive means you only have 2 guys pushing when there should be like 4 or 5. And
right.
And then
we've talked about
guys surrounding it.
We've talked about in the past, I think, Jeff, right, when that section that Eric and Joe drove, we've talked about that past saying, oh man, you need like a 5th person, right? When there would be like 4 of us driving, it'd be like, oh, we had a couple slip us, right? So it's like if we had 5 people on the section where we just had 2, then we would, even do better. But Eric and Joe did a great job. They were kicked out a few does that were.
They did it as best you could with 2 people.
It was amazing. Amazing
being able to do it right. And
it was amazing for 2 people.
I think from my perspective in the trusty old ladder, I was watching Joe and Eric do it, and they were, like Dan said, they were super effective. But because there's only 2 guys out there, it was obvious the deer were kind of going.
They either
circle them or go off to the one side where there's not a driver.
In that section of cattails, quite often we'll do that drive and we'll put up a buck, and maybe somebody gets a glimpse of it, maybe they don't. But it'll just run circles around those guys and never come out. And you go and you drive again, they still don't come out. And but if you get there's only 5 or 6 trails that go through there. So if you get 5 or 6 guys pushing it, you're covering every trail. It's just we don't have that many guys to do it. And if we keep drowning them, I don't think we're going to have guys to show up.
Josh is trying to figure out what the heck happened.
Are you talking deer or are you talking people?
Let's go through there. Went. I mean, the first one to shoot was Dave. I think you shot one.
Yeah.
Yep. There was kind of where we set up and where they pushed. Actually, it would have been where I suspected a deer might have come if it wasn't, stressed out and running hard. And actually, this one wasn't.
Up, right?
Yeah, it was sneaking out because it was like I almost thought it was the noise was a driver coming in. Right? It was because I was hearing crunch, 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 and I was looking out in the cattails for everybody else. Right? And then I looked over to my side and I was like, oh, there's a deer, and he was creeping out. I thought it was a she, but there are real big ears that were covering the antlers. I thought it was, hey, that's a big doe. Turned out there was something more on the head there. As one of my buddies called it the pronoun deer.
But that's your first buck with a gun and your second buck, so nobody can really give you any crap on it.
No. And as we were looking at it, right? I mean, it was a pretty big body for that runt of a rack, but people, Dan has mentioned before how you can get 2-year-old deer up here that are 130s, and you can get 2-year-old deer here that are like 65s. This was like a 65.
That was like a 50, Dave.
Yeah. So he was little, but it was he was just walking out, right? He knew something was going on, and he just was easing out, slipping out the back door. And that's, I think, what you get with a lot of them. You just don't even know that they're there. You had to just be in the right spot to see it. And they just kind of are ghosts, especially in those cattails, right? Because if people aren't used to doing that or being in cattails, they're 7 feet tall, even when they're dry. Taller than that when they're green. You just can't see them. And there's one part.
What you also have to do is stop every so often and just pause and just listen.
Yep.
Yes.
So because they're not always just busting through the crap. Sometimes they're sneaking. They're sneaking around you, and if you stop and listen, you can kind of pick up on that. So
yep.
It's definitely what to do.
And I've had it where I've stopped, like we're doing a drive, and I'll stop for 10, 20 seconds, maybe 30, And then that next couple of steps, whatever was, if they're sitting tight, they'll start busting out because they just get so nervous they can't even.
Yeah, they freak
control.
out when you stop. They think you're standing there looking at them or something.
Yeah, I mean,
they usually jump right when you stop, or they jump on that first step when you start again.
Yeah,
right. I've had that happen a lot on those where we're covering the big swamp stand.
Yeah.
Where you just walk, you stop for a bit, and then the next thing you know, you're taking a step, and you just hear total chaos.
Yeah. So I had that one come by, and I was sort of I wasn't that far out of being in line with Dan and where his stand was. So the way the buck came in, he was coming from my right to left. Dan was a little more on my left. I had a real small opening, but I had a bigger opening, but closer to where facing Dan. Even though I was in a tree and elevated, I still didn't want to, be shooting too directly toward Dan. Dan said he's kind of bulletproof, but I didn't want to test that theory. So I shot probably a little earlier than I should have. If I would have just waited because he was sneaking, I would have been able. It would have been a, 40-yard shot, just with a deer that's walking. That would have been perfect. But I shot a little bit sooner, and I hit him. I thought I hit him good because I heard crash. I thought I hit him maybe front shoulder-ish. And I think as we looked at him later, he did get hit in the neck. So maybe that was where it was. And I heard crash, then not much of anything. And then I heard Dan shooting.
Yeah, I heard him crashing. He obviously crashing after you shot. And stopped, and then he crashed again. And he crashed again, and it sounded like a deer going down. And then all of a sudden he just came busting out by me, and then I gave him about 6.
2 in the leg. 2 in the leg.
And he got out of sight, but not by far.
And then shortly after that, you can speak to this, Dan, but Eric and Joe were, they were working it, and they were doing a great job. I could watch them as I was looking out at the marsh, and they were communicating and how to line each other up, and then all of a sudden, bang, they'd yell deer, and then
I think the key with that drive is staying tight to that waterway.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I could see you were hugging that edge, Eric.
Yeah, every time we do that drive, I try to get guys to go tight against that water, and they don't want to because if you fall through, it's pretty treacherous.
Yeah,
it is. But the funny thing is about that spot, and I've driven that before. I've been on the other end of it, the driving side of it. Is the closer you get, there's some spots where it's not great, but when you get out to this little section of it, it's almost like dry land. It's so firm. The cattails are taller there, but it's like crazy firm. And obviously it shouldn't be a huge surprise. Like that's where all the deer are kind of loaded into that section where the cattails are super dense.
I got a question for you guys. Keep going. What's your guys' laws for number of shells you can carry or bullets you can carry on you? What are you laughing for, Jeff? We have laws for that in Indiana here.
What is it in Indiana?
I just think of Dan. He's got mag after mag after mag, and
you can only have 10 bullets on you.
Oh, really?
On your person completely?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
If you're carrying a rifle.
No, I don't think there's a limit on Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think I had. It's a old 30-30. It was my grandfather's. It's like a 1949 and a half Winchester 94.
Yeah.
And, it's perfect for what kind of stuff we do, right? It's just like this short iron sight, get stuff on it. It's super short, fast. Plus, great nostalgia and everything. But I had whatever that thing holds, like 7 at a time. And then I had this sling that's got a little bandolier on it, and I think I got like 10 on that. So no, we don't have a law as far as that goes.
I think Dan's advice long ago to one of my boys was fill your pocket with ammo and you'll never run out.
Yeah.
I
hate it when young guys are along and deer runs by them and you're like, what's going on? I'm out of ammo. It's like, what? Ammo?
That's funny.
Well, we go out there. I mean, how would you even do drives with a 10 bullet limit? Because I mean, we go out and we drive huge sections. We do like 5 drives in a row before we go back to the truck. And
I don't know how we
might shoot 5 or 6 deer when we're on these drives.
Well, I think that rule in Indiana is only with rifles. I think Indiana's trying to eliminate people shooting like 300 blackouts, like, like,
Yeah.
so that's probably what the thinking was behind the law.
But also, that's 10 in the gun. You can have more rounds in your pockets.
No,
you can't.
No, he's saying 10 on his person.
Wow,
Okay.
that's
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. To Dan's point, I don't know how we would do that, because think of the area that we normally do, like on a day like today, Dan. We hit like 4 or 5 spots.
Yeah,
it's literally sun up to sundown. Like
I shot 8 times on that drive.
How many?
On the first drive, I shot 8 times.
You got 2 left.
and there's been times where I know you've shot more.
Yeah.
On that same drive.
Right.
Just depends on how many deer.
Well, you wound a deer, or a deer's hit, like the one that Dave shot. When it comes rolling out of there, hit.
Yeah.
Or assuming it's hit because he was shooting at it. I mean, you don't want to just, okay, I'm only going to shoot once or twice. I'm going to make 2 really good shots. You want to make sure you end the suffering. You put the animal down and you recover it.
Yep.
You really don't want that thing sailing through the woods with a whole bunch of other hunters out there and getting in arguments over whose deer it is too.
Yeah.
You want to put it down quick. So I have no problem with just shooting until it's down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So one thing we did right on that drive, I think, was the drivers yelled deer, so I had time to get a camera on, and I think it was nice to be ready when deer were coming. But
yeah,
I
think that helped the shooters, the people that were sitting too.
What's interesting about that is how often they yelled deer. How many times do you hear deer crashing versus how many deer came out?
How many you saw? Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of deer, they were yelling, and you don't hear all of them. So that was interesting. I also noticed, like on opening weekend, on Saturday, when I did a drive and it was snowing, everything we saw was fresh. And I did one drive, and me alone with 2 other drivers, I saw 7 beds myself, where I kicked deer out of those beds. And one of the drivers said they saw 3, and the other one saw like 5. And no deer went by a stander on that drive.
Mm-hmm.
So we're pushing a lot more deer than what we even realized. What I even realized,
Yeah. And
so,
you think the way the terrain was, you think it's funneled, and you think they're going to go a certain way, but somehow they find a different way.
I mean, when they were driving, right away, when the drive first started, I heard them yell deer, and I'm watching. The first time they yelled deer, I saw one bounding along the lake, way out, just sneaking around them. Well, usually you can't see him from where I'm at, but that one was jumping real high, and I could see the head coming out.
Nope. And that one doe, that it had to be, 15 minutes after Eric and Joe started, the doe came out directly behind me, behind some dogwood and red brush, and I just caught a glimpse of her behind that, and she ultimately got away. That was well after those guys started pushing. She made a big circle and came back.
Yeah.
Yep. And conversely, that buck I mentioned, right? Nobody else saw it. Nobody else knew it was there other than me when it was just kind of sneaking out. So it's just funny how all that stuff goes. A lot of times people might hear the drives and see, the big orange push, but that doesn't mean it's automatic.
Right.
The other thing we did too is we weren't just taking random deer trails through the cattails. We would hear something get up and go and investigate, and we would see fresh tracks in the snow and continue to take that trail. So that really helps get them up and drive them all the way out of there too.
It helped. It helped, I think, you guys too, because it wasn't real windy today. It was pretty quiet and calm.
Yeah,
I think we made that.
I don't think that's a help. I think that gives those deer time to think about it and hear you coming.
Well, yeah, but for the pushers to be able to hear the deer if they're starting to move, I think Eric, you and I commented on how dead still it was while Dan was setting up.
Yeah, it was very quiet.
So
the thing is when you get in there and they hear you coming, they have time to think about it.
True.
And
yeah,
then they can sneak, they can run, they can wait till you go past, they can hear where you're at and know if they want to. When you catch them off guard because it's windy, and they don't hear nothing until you're 10 feet from them, and that's when they get panicked and they just run out. Right. And that's an easier deer to kill.
Yep.
Yep.
And the other thing I'll say too, Dan, is when we were done with that drive, you came back and met up with me. We talked over where we placed that ladder, and we placed it in pretty much a normal spot we've done in the last 10, 12 years.
Yep.
And we reassessed where that doe went, and I think we made a game plan for next year to move that ladder maybe 50 yards in a different direction. That's going to give us access
narrower,
to
yeah. And looking at it now from that perspective, it just makes total sense. But
yeah,
it just seemed like we had to contain the area where the deer were.
Yeah.
But now it looks like, moving back because of how many slipped through the back door. I think there'd be a lot. And we found that shorter cattail area where you'd be able to shoot them. I think just totally that's a better area.
Yeah. And it's not like, when the drive's done, we're done, get collected deer and go. We had about a 10-minute conversation on a better option. I think we worked out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we got one other deer on that drive. Eric and Joe put one up, and it ran across the point, and that was a doe. And I took 2 shots on it. The second shot, I dropped it in its tracks. So we ended up getting 2 deer.
You hit it twice, by the way.
I did?
Yes, sir.
Where was the first hit?
We found one right in the side, and one right through the throat.
Okay. All right. So both bullets hit it then.
Yep.
What were you saying, Josh?
You guys like these step ladders you use? Are they just like Home Depot step ladders that you?
Yeah, it's like an electrician's ladder. It's not double sided. It's only got one side with rungs on it, and then Dan painted it all camel. It's a 10-foot ladder, I believe.
Yeah, it's 8 or 10 foot.
Yeah, I sit up on the very top of it.
Yeah, you sit up there.
Jeff can't shoot from up there, so he's on the side of it. But I'll get up on the very top of it. And we had a kid out there one time who he had a 12 gauge, young guy, and all these does came running out, and he's shooting at him. And I watched the hillside. It was hilarious. As he's shooting, the thing's tilting back, and he's pulling himself right over.
Here we just got done talking about gun safety.
Right.
Now we're talking about kids falling off a ladder with a gun.
Well, what's
that's what
funny,
I was. That's in my head. Was like, man, I feel like you'd fall off there.
It's not bad.
What you do is you stomp on the bottom rung, and you put the feet into the muck, and it gets actually pretty sturdy.
Yeah,
it's not when it's ice though. It's kind of hard to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like being a couple rungs down because I feel like I have better rotation. If you're sitting on the top, I feel like you can't really turn to your right too well.
Yeah, but this is Dan we're talking about.
Oh, I can swivel around.
Yeah, and then close your left eye.
Yeah. And it's I don't know about who's all sat down lower and gotten deer, but obviously Dan on that thing sits up high, and then I guess you're saying it was your brother-in-law Dan Jason. I know he sat way up on the top of it, and he's a pretty crack shot, and he got one off that ladder one year that was, I don't know, 150, 200 yards out when he was sitting up in the middle of this vast expanse of cattails while sitting on top of the thing. And so it can be done, but for the first time doing it, it's kind of weird because it's
a little unnerving the first time.
Yeah,
first time you do it, but once you get used to it and you learn how to set it, it's fine.
You got that one antlered buck out of there. Was that last year? Or
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago that was. Yep, I was there.
That one almost ran underneath the ladder before you hit it.
Yeah, that darn deer was right underneath me. And that was a bit of a disappointment when I walked up on it. I'm like, hey, you got a good buck, and walk up to it, and it's just one side.
Well, I still think, the inches on that one side probably exceeded the total inches of the one I had today.
They could very well be. Yeah, but yours had a big body, Dave.
It was kind of a tank for having a small rack.
He was thick.
Junk in the trunk.
So, we had a little more excitement on that drive too. We got done. Well, not that drive, but when we got done with that drive, we wanted to get one more done so that the people that did all the pushing for us would get some shooting too. And we had one in mind that's got some nice deer in it, and we usually put deer up on it. And last year we killed deer on it. And we went over there, and you got to cross a creek. So we got to the crossing, and there's no way to cross. And I checked the depth, and it's really deep. So from where I was checking the depth, I looked down the creek, and I saw a log going across. And I'm like, problem solved. You got a log. So then we get down by this log, and these guys are all whining about it, like, this looks sketchy. And I'm like, it's a log. It looks easy.
Josh, let me
just take the stick.
It was snow covered.
Balance yourself with the stick and walk across. It should be a piece of cake. So I go.
Meanwhile, the other thing to add is that not only was this a creek, right, and it was wide, but it was iced over, right? But it was not enough ice to be stable. But so it was not just water. There was actual ice there.
So I get across, and Jeff's like, I don't know if I want to go across that.
Which, by the way, Dan looked. He did very well. He looked like a ballerina just gliding over that.
Like a monkey fox.
He's like a mink.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Monkey fox.
So I get across, and Joe's like, well, I guess if you made it, I'll go. So Joe starts going, and
he was using the stick.
He gets on the log, and he kind of like loses his balance or something and steps onto the ice.
Oh,
and his leg goes through, and it's like bottomless, so flips over sideways, and his legs get caught on the log, so his head's going under and stuff, and he's like going down. Right, everything is going down. So the cameras got dropped. Everybody had to go over and save his butt and pull him out of there. And
we had him once coming up, and then he slipped out of my hand.
Yeah, I saw you reaching for him, Jeff, and I was filming while you were reaching for him, and I thought, as soon as I saw him slip out of your hand, I figured I better put this camera down and I better reach my hand out.
Eric has a future as a photojournalist.
That was pretty sketchy. So that pretty much ended the drives. I mean, he was completely soaked.
Oh,
that was as soaked as I've seen anybody.
From the neck down. I mean, it was legit.
Land on your back in ice and bust through. What chance do you have?
He was literally upside down because his legs were up on top of that log.
Yeah.
He was forcing his head under.
His head didn't go under, but it wasn't.
No, he was doing it. He was doing everything he could to not let that happen.
Yeah.
And clearly that water, when it's you had a skim of ice on the top, the temperature, not good.
Yeah.
Now it happened to be a pretty warm day actually compared to what we really had winter since the start of I don't know, probably a couple of weeks before gun season. It was like legit winter temperatures. But today it warmed up into the 50s. But still, when you've been just dunked in 33 degree water, and then I really wanted Joe to be on that shooting position on the next drive.
So we get him out of the water, right? Dan looks back. He's across the area, the water. He's like, "We good to go?" How you doing, Joe? We good?
You got this?
And I actually think Joe half thought about it.
Well, you know what? I'm just used to that stuff. I go through like that up to my armpits and stuff, and I just keep going. I mean, but literally being that wet sitting on a drive is difficult.
Yeah.
If he was going to be the walker, maybe it'd be fine.
I was thinking maybe we could get some clothes out of the trucks or something, or he was bad. I mean, his boots are full of everything, and his gun went under.
Yeah.
Now that was bad for obviously the gun itself. However, people are saying, "Oh, the scope must be trash," and I look through and it's like, whatever brand scope that was, they did all right as a manufacturer because it was a Vortex. Because it was clear as a bell.
Yeah. Yeah, it held up well.
So that's fun with Dan and the Swamp, I think. And then there was a couple of years ago from that same drive. I wonder if I can find that.
And people wonder why we're not getting guys coming out with us anymore.
Oh yeah, this was the same.
Like, I can't figure it out.
He literally could have been in some serious trouble if we weren't there to pull him out because your feet caught up like that. I mean,
This was the same drive from it was either last year or the year before. I don't know if people can see that. Oops.
What is that?
Dan.
Oh, yeah, I remember
It looked
that.
like scope rash, but Dan wound up catching a. You can see on this
that
side
stick I
here.
got in my eye?
He caught the stick in the eye. It looked like he went around with Mike Tyson, but that was that same drive a couple of years ago.
That's the day Teddy came with us.
That was, yeah. But it never made it to THP video because we didn't shoot anything.
Well, they always want to come at the end of the week when we're done shooting stuff. We always do the best stuff early. Yep. Except for now when we don't have enough guys, so then we're still doing good stuff.
Yeah, so it was just you four and Joe. Then is that the only people that were with you?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was
five's even
hard to do bigger sections when you got 5 guys. I mean,
it was really hard.
4.
Yeah,
5,
and I was impressed just with the fact the thing we drove. That was the heart. It has the widest area to cover. Like I said earlier, 5 people actually with feet in the cattails is really what we'd need to do it well. Just the fact that it wasn't, it was midweek after opening day. I had seen other boot tracks leading kind of to where I set up. I wasn't expecting much, and we actually did have good action. And unfortunately, that kind of ended where we did, but with a few laughs and a real cold friend. But it was fun.
Josh, you got to come up.
Yeah, I know I do. I will one year.
What else was interesting is on that first drive, we went and finished it and went back to get the deer, and the deer were just inside of the swamp, laying on the edge, like 5 yards from the woods, just in the marsh. And we come walking up, and there's 2 ladies in blaze orange with rifles
on lawn chairs,
sitting on lawn chairs, like 10 feet from the deer, just looking at us with these goofy smiles. And I'm like, I hate to do this, but we got deer behind you. And they're like looking around. They didn't know they were there. Yeah. We went out and dragged the deer out, and we started field dressing them right there. And they just pulled up their lawn chairs and just stood there staring at us. It was the strangest thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I walked up because I don't remember what.
I think it was a mom and her daughter.
Yeah, I think it was. And I walked up and I'm like, I'm seeing everybody from a distance. I'm like, I don't think anybody was wearing like full, blaze orange pants and jackets. Yeah. And I'm like, what's that? Maybe my eyes are deceiving me. No, but there's no 2 people sitting in a lawn chair. Even, all that disturbance, you'd think they would relocate, but they just kept sitting there.
That's funny, Dave, because I was thinking to myself too, well, where did these guys get a chair? What are they doing sitting here? There's deer to drag out of the swamp.
Right. Well, then we dressed both of them right by them, and they just were sitting there watching us. So I think the daughter was on her phone, and Dan, I think you looked over and it's like, there's more deer there. I said it too, but they were kind of facing pretty much the wrong direction.
Yeah, they were facing uphill as opposed to
nobody really, your average person doesn't realize they live down in that water.
Right.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were sitting there just watching that ridge.
Yeah, I was. I think it was Joe. I was telling you'd like to give him some advice or, tell him, hey, come with us. But then I'd probably drown them or something.
Yeah, right. there was no.
My advice might not be the best advice because the way we kill deer is probably kind of crazy.
Yeah, they would have had an enjoyable afternoon turn into something with Infalt, which usually
that's probably we can't really let Josh come along because he's the guy with the common sense. Would probably be like, no, guys, this is sketchy. You can't be doing this.
No,
I've got a son and a wife here, Dan.
Yeah.
It sounds like you got a couple guys that already tell you that. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, Josh, I was like that too. And then after like 2-3 seasons with Dan, I'm just like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
Jeff was like, yeah, now you did it, Dan. Now we lost Joe.
Yeah,
now he ain't coming back.
Yeah, after Joe went in, there was no way I was going to attempt that crossing.
You were pretty clear about it right away, Jeff. You said, I am not making that. that trek across that log.
Nope.
Well, Jeff, you're having a hard time anyways. You got a major ankle injury.
Yeah, there's an ankle issue going on there, so it's not super stable. And to try and do a ballerina across a log, not happening.
Not a good idea.
One of the things that I'm not sure Eric or Jeff, I remember meeting Josh at one of Dan's workshops. It was snowing like mad, and one of the main reasons I remember him is, not many people come up to the workshop with Southern Indiana accents. You probably don't even think you got an accent, Josh, but compared to all us cheeseheads, you got an accent that's different. And so I remember meeting Josh. I'm like, oh, this is a nice guy, right? But I don't think you've ever. So that when we were out there that day, right, it was snowing like mad. Everything was iced over. Walking was pretty easy for the most part. But have you ever hunted this cattails nasty stuff when it's not frozen over?
Don't tell him.
Yeah, I have. I shot my buck in a cattail marsh last year.
Okay.
In November, November 4th or whatever day it was.
Yeah.
It wasn't frozen yet.
Gotcha.
It's not for everybody.
No.
I've also did some. This has been a number of years ago. I did some scouting in the summertime up there. But I used to, at my old job, I used to actually have to go to Wisconsin a whole bunch for work. So while I was up there for work, I would scout in the evenings because I figured I'd be up there eventually for work and during deer season. So my plan was to work in the daytime at the farms and then hunt in the evenings, like, in September or whenever I was up there, October.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
You don't have really big bucks on those drives. You find stretches of marsh and stuff that are so isolated nobody can get to them that you have to cross a big creek to get to. That nobody can cross.
Well, but it is kind of funny though where that happened, and the thing where Dan had the eye scrape. We did see huge sign in there that year that you had that eye scrape. We just didn't happen to see the buck. We kicked something out, didn't know what the size was, just when we started that particular drive. But there was like big, like fresh rubs in there.
Yeah.
And so it Dan was right. I mean, that spot can hold big. It has held big stuff. It wasn't meant to be today.
I know your guys' drives are different than ours because you guys are in those cattails, but it does seem like whenever we don't do drives anymore, but when we did, when we kill a big buck, it would seem like it was always the driver that would end up shooting the buck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. If
a lot of the really big ones, that is the way it is. For us, it's mostly the shooters, but I know that I've had some pretty good opportunities when I'm pushing at the bigger animals, and I've noticed that when I have shot bigger animals on the drives, they're just sneaking through.
Mm-hmm.
Where the little stuff scatters. Big stuff uses tactical maneuvers, and because of that, they're so vulnerable to the drivers. They know the game. They know that if they come running out, they're going to get shot, so they try to sneak around you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think of a drive we did last year, Eric. I know we were next to each other, and there was more of the bounders, right? And it was like, okay, you cut in between me and you, and it's like, all right, well, it was really close. It should probably be a dead deer, but I also didn't want it to be a dead Eric. So there's sometimes you just can't shoot, right? If they split you, and that stuff happens. But yeah, that buck, even though he was little, he was easing out. He wasn't busting out today.
I appreciate you showing interest in my well-being today.
That's right.
Practicing your muzzle control.
That's right.
But to Dave's point, that'll happen. I mean, Dan, do you remember when that happened to Luke and Dave? There was a big buck that split between both of them, and it was probably 15 feet between each one of them. And my son came out. He's like, I couldn't shoot because Dave was right there.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, that was a healthy sized buck. I mean, that was a big one. So they're not dumb.
Yeah.
Anyways, and you don't want to be hunting with dumb people when you're doing this kind of stuff either.
Nope.
For sure.
Nope, not at all.
That's probably a good statement to end on with the deer drive talk.
That's right.
Anyway, you guys want to take some questions from the chat, and we can all kind of pitch in if we need to.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I haven't really given the spiel yet, but we got like about 300 people on, and If you're new, all you have to do is ask your question in the comment section down below, and we'll try to get to them tonight. We may not get to all of them tonight. I haven't went through all the questions yet, or haven't been looking at the chat, so I'm not sure how many are on here. But probably won't do call-ins tonight just because we got so many folks on already. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Leave a comment if you're like listening to this on Saturday or something. And let's get into the questions.
Sounds good. I'll let Josh look for questions, and while he's doing that, I'll just say, Josh has been doing a great job, doing these live streams and really everything with all the content. I've just been super impressed with all of it. So props to you, Josh.
Yep. Thanks. I got still got a lot of learning to do and all this stuff, but I'm getting better at it. But all right. David asked something. He said, if you were teaching a young person to hunt from scratch, what are the steps and levels you would have them master progressively?
First thing I'd be worried about is making sure that they had fun, that they enjoyed it. Don't send them off swimming or crossing logs. I'd probably just concentrate on getting them an opportunity on an animal as your first step, and let them progress at their own pace. I don't think I would try to make those steps. I'd let them create their own steps. Let them tell you what they want instead of trying to figure out what you think that they need for steps. I think that'd be my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I'd also say, Dan, you kind of preach it too, is, you never know where the next deer is going to come around. So don't get Debbie Downer-ish, stay optimistic, stay positive.
You've got 2 kids that probably needed to be mentored differently.
Me?
2 totally different personalities.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh my gosh, they couldn't be any more different. Yeah.
Because your kids came with us and kind of got mentored on our hunts. You know, they got the devil Dan, and they got the angel Jeff.
Yeah, they did, and you're right. They're very, very different personalities. And to be very transparent, my oldest son, this type of hunting is not for him. He's the kind that he's okay with sitting in a tree stand all day long. You put him in a ladder stand, he will sit there from sun up to sundown. He did this type of hunting, I think, 2 seasons, and he's just not comfortable out there with all that water and sketchiness, I guess you'd say.
But the other son, Luke, he's a marsh warrior.
He'll plow through anything for you.
He'll give her. Yeah. But I mean, I think it's, when I see this question, I think of, I started super late in life, but when I think of it almost like taking a kid fishing, right? You want to have them see stuff, and although it's not, catching a fish is different than shooting a deer, but just having them see things, right? And having some action, right? If they're catching, when you're fishing, if they're catching 3-inch bluegills, they're getting action, right? They're staying busy. And even if you can get them where it's a point where they're seeing deer, even if they're out of range or whatever, it's like, that's like part of that experience and building that excitement in their mind. And then, kind of easing them on up into the actual, harvesting of the animal and all that stuff, and improving and taking it where they want. But I think just that initial thing, just like with, little stunted bluegills in a pond with a kid, right? It's just like, just get them seeing some animals.
You got to look at it like this too. I mean, they're not you. I mean, people try to mold these kids when they're mentoring them into what they want them to be, instead of looking at what the kid wants to do and letting them grow. And I think that's where you get a lot of this, where they get back out of hunting and stuff like that, because it's not, they don't see it that way. I mean, for a lot of them, it's just got to be fun but you get kids that are serious too and really want to kill something big, and they get in with some goofy mentor. It's just having fun, joking around.
Yeah.
Not saying somebody bad, but you kind of got to let the kid tell you what he wants to do and what he wants to be. I mean, I think I've learned some lessons there over the years. I mean, my kids, I think I put so much pressure on them to work hard and stuff that they didn't enjoy hunting as much as they should have, that they got out of it a little earlier, don't go back as much, not to say they don't like hunting, but they don't like it like I do. And I know both of my sons really liked just going off and doing exotic hunts and fun stuff, and pheasant hunting, bunny hunting, going and hunting wild boars or something like that. The occasional bear hunt maybe for Junior. Jamie didn't like bear hunting, but to try and make them into little Dans is probably why looking back when I was younger and stuff, and pushing them in their teens, I really pushed James probably harder than I should have. I would have him out there with a alpha and 5 sticks on his back, and we'd go 3 miles back into a swamp, and I'm treating him like he's an adult, a man, and just telling him, just man up and take it, and it's probably not the best way to mentor somebody. You got to ask the kid what he wants to do and where he wants to go and what he wants to go after,
And teach them the basics, woodsmanship, how to use a compass. Don't rely on the phone all the time, because I think that's a big thing that's missing is basic woodmanship now is not everybody's really adapted to it. Tracking, recognizing the type of tracks.
Yeah.
And going to Dan's point just real quick, you mentioned about letting that kid tell you what he wants to do. We all have different personalities. I agree with that completely. You have to throw a kid in there and let him make mistakes too, because you don't learn anything unless you're making mistakes.
Right.
You can hear about it and know that it is a mistake, but you just don't learn the same way until you make that mistake. So
that's the same thing like at work when I'm mentoring apprentice machinists, and these kids will tell me that they have a plan to try and do something. How are you gonna achieve this project? How are you gonna get it done? And what they're telling you, makes sense, but it ain't gonna work either because you've been down that road, and you know how they're gonna fail. Telling them it's gonna fail when they're excited to try a different way and try to do this method that they see that they're gonna do doesn't help that kid. Just telling them, well, how are you going to achieve that? What if this happens? What if that happens? How are you going to do that? When they want to do it, just let them do it and let them fail. Yep. And then don't tell them, well, I knew that was going to happen. Just let them fail and then say, well, why did it fail? And, let them learn from it. Yep. The same thing, like if a kid wants to do some drive a certain way or something, and he really like, well, if we did this is what would happen. Okay, let's do it. You just gotta go out there and let them make some mistakes and learn, as long as they're not mistakes that are going to hurt somebody.
Right.
Yep.
What do you guys think about like kids having iPhones and iPads and stuff in the stand and looking at that the whole time?
I'm not in favor of it. I think they totally miss the experience.
Maybe, but maybe taking it away from them is too much.
Yeah, there's probably a balance there that you can do, but I think just have them sitting down the whole time.
You're staring down at your phone and the buck is walking past you.
That's just it. I mean, these kids are growing up with these things in their pockets at 6 years old already. If they never had the chance to sit there without a phone, they wouldn't know any different.
Mm-hmm. That'd be like telling me to get up in the morning and not have a monster.
Probably equally as bad for you, I imagine.
Yeah, right.
At least you're not having before bed like Eric.
You can say it. I don't care.
I'm just kidding. Oh, let's see here. That's a good question. That's always something I'm constantly thinking about. Not sure how I'm going to tackle it. I read a couple books about it, about taking kids hunting and stuff, so trying to prepare for it. But yeah, I think my biggest reality is going to be like, for my son, it's like, what if he doesn't like to hunt? Well, it's like most people don't, and it's like also like most people, almost everybody doesn't like to hunt like we do, so he's probably not going to,
You just tell them, some people don't like to hunt. Some boys don't like girls.
All right.
You don't have to go there yet. But.
Too far.
Too far. Yeah.
That's crossing the line, man.
Sorry.
keep those walks in the woods fun. I know that you do that with your boy. You know, you take him out in the woods. Just get him. I think even just the starting spot is just a love for the woods, right?
Right.
And
Yeah, for sure.
try to catch a frog or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, he got more than one of them under his belt. So
Yeah.
all right, let's go on to the next one here because we're well over an hour now. But anyway, Dan, what would your gun season strategy be for hill country terrain? PA's gun season starts Saturday.
I'd probably be trying to find clear cuts and getting on the downwind side of them. I would have set areas where I have where I know bucks are if I live there. If I didn't live there and I was going to someplace new, I'd be checking out those clear cuts. I'd probably be on foot, slowly stalking the downwind edge of them. I'd find sign and maybe sit there that evening. My mornings would probably be stalking until I found some good stuff. If I knew the area, I would probably be in the clear cuts that got sign of big bucks, the downwind edges, thicker areas, places with mountain laurel, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I haven't hunted there, but the only thing I would think of adding is just from things I've experienced around clear cuts in northern Wisconsin is if you have an idea of where like the big trails are or where a lot of people walk, keep that in mind too.
I guess I'd add probably leeward sides too, and probably ridges that got multiple areas of those thick spots because you get deer cruising up and down them. When is their gun season? Is it
this
Saturday?
This Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday.
Probably kind of ending rut now, but
yeah.
I had a buck go by me last night. Yeah, yesterday night that was chasing does and grunting.
Yep. It seems like that's kind of really shut down here too. The rut has in Indiana. I've been out the last couple.
Disappeared, but I'm still seeing grunting and stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
We had a super chat, so thanks, Matt. If you really want to get noticed, you can put the super chat in there, and
there you go.
your question will definitely get answered, no matter what it is. So
when we were out there Sunday, you saw a scrape, Dan, I think, right? That was pretty fresh, and then on the place where I sat today, there was a scrape that wasn't super old that had a track in it. So I think it's winding down, but it doesn't mean it's all the way done.
Yeah. Dan, what do you think about the second rut?
I mean, it happens and it's rut, but it's not to the intensity of the first one. Maybe actually it's kind of like a blend, because the rut really never ends until you get to like into December a bit, because they the does go into heat, and then bucks still keep chasing after they've been bred, but then the does are starting to go into heat, so there's some early chasing with that, and then they start breeding the fawns, and they start breeding the fawns, and so that it just kind of stretches for me. I mean, you get your periods when they're not moving much in daylight, or they lock down, as people say, or whatever, but it comes and goes. You can get on at any time. It can just break loose, and it might be in one area, and you might be, the next woodlot over, nothing's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. People were asking about that buck that got stolen from that boy, about if it was on public. It was on private. It was on their
correct.
Their
they went on
land.
Private land, stole the buck. So somebody probably on a neighboring farm watching.
Right. Yeah, they had to have. I mean,
I would have to imagine it was somebody with permission, not somebody that owned a neighboring farm. Because if you owned it, you'd think that how do you do that with your neighbor right there?
Right.
It's probably somebody that got permission to hunt there. I'm thinking on a neighboring property, or maybe they're up against public or something. But somebody saw that on their property. I'm sure saw them shoot the buck or something. Saw them leave, and then probably went over and stole it. But I don't know that for fact. I'm just assuming. It's the only thing that really makes sense.
It was private. It was private.
Yeah, I think people were just questioning, what exactly was going on there and all that. And it sounded like,
Yeah, so the guy was trespassing as well as stealing the deer.
Yep.
I believe he's getting charged with theft and trespassing.
Really?
Yep.
As he should.
Yep.
Agreed.
What sort of strategy would you suggest for a solo hunter venturing onto public for the gun opener? Ohio Hills. This is probably the same kind of answer we gave before.
Or PA. Yeah.
He's asking you, Josh.
Yes.
Yeah, for the hills. I've never been to Ohio during gun season. Obviously, so I don't really know I don't know, what it looks like down there during gun. But here in Indiana, I know a lot of guys have success, getting back in there a little bit deeper, getting into, good security cover back there, like things like clear cuts, maybe some drainages that are leading away from, wherever, some security cover and stuff like that. So same stuff as Dan was talking about, though. Also, I would tell you also, if you're by yourself, and I would just make sure you're in the woods. Don't if you're like on out of state or something, I'd just make sure you're in the woods, because a lot of guys will get down at 9 o'clock and leave, and you got a chance of bumping one around. So whether that be on the ground or in a stand,
there's a lot to that, because I know some guys that couldn't hunt their way out of a paper sack.
Mm-hmm.
That still kill their fair share of deer just by being in the woods all the time.
Yeah,
they'll just go find a spot and just sit there, and eventually something comes by or gets kicked past them or something. They probably don't kill them to the degree that me or you do, but they're still killing deer in spots that me or you'd kind of like, I wouldn't sit here,
Sure.
So even if you have halfway decent ideas of where to sit, just being in the woods is helpful, because this deer can kind of really show up anywhere. Case in point, I remember doing these drives one year. We walked into a field off of a road, and where you park, there's like 6 or 8 cars there all the time, even during bow season. And we get out and we walk into the entrance where everybody walks, and there's this old guy sitting on a chair in orange, 50 feet from the parking spot, staring at this open field. And I just laughed and I said, some people got no common sense. And we walk into the woods and kicked up a big buck and ran out, and the guy shoots it. So, you could sit on a bucket next to your car and kill a deer. It's just a matter of a lot of it has to do with time. There's really ingredients to killing deer. There's the first ingredient is you have to be hunting, and then it starts getting to the different other things that it might help you. But those are smaller percentages. The biggest percentage of putting deer on your wall is actually being out there hunting.
Right.
Good point, Josh.
Yeah. He's specifically talking about gun opener too, and it's just like, I bet I would venture to say 70% of the guys that go gun hunting opening morning are probably back at their truck at 9:30 and eating breakfast somewhere by 10. So
today, before we did the drives, I wanted to get out a short hunt in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I hunted for the first hour of daylight and left. I got pictures after I left on my cell cam on the farm, and I went back out there because I lost my camera.
Yeah.
Look at me! I'm so surprised.
I found 3 or 4 different sets of tracks in my tracks, across my tracks,
mm-hmm.
that were fresh
after
during the day. So sometimes during the day, these deer walk through and walked in my footprints. So if I would have sat there all day, one of the sets was pretty big.
Yeah. All right. Here's a really good question that'll be a good clip. But how do you deal with variable winds?
I smell like the deer want me to smell like. They love smelling me. That gets my scent out all over the place, and then the deer come from every direction.
Anybody who's been downwind from you knows that is fake news, my friend.
That's like me and Joe were having an argument coming back from him falling through the swamp of which one of us stunk more.
Yeah.
In the truck.
We all voted for Dan.
I think I won that one. Yeah. But, variable winds are, it's tough. I just try to take the wind where it's supposed to be going, and I try to figure out why it's going a different way. I'll tell you what, variable winds used to kill me years ago. Just every hunch, it seemed like you had winds all over the place, until I started learning how to read the land and being able to determine how the wind's going to flow. I can look at, how the tree line's being hit by the wind and what's going to happen with it, how our opening's going to be affected by the wind. And I started sitting back a little from the opening so it's not swirling like a toilet bowl when it hits that. I started, looking at how the thermals and the winds are going to be hitting each other. And I started really trying to dissect what the wind's doing. And one thing that really helped me do that is milkweed, because it made me understand exactly what happens to that wind every time I'm sitting, every time it gusts, and just dropping that stuff all the time and looking what's going on as the thermals change in a day, as this goes on, as that goes on. You start to figure things out. You start to see too that the wind might not be variable where you're at, but where your wind is blowing, it's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. If you watch the milkweed go for a distance. So for me, it's really about exactly where you pick your spot.
And I have nowhere near the experience of any of you guys, right? But there was a situation I had earlier this year where I went into a brand new area. Wind was blowing a certain way. I thought, all right, here's where I'm going to set up, right? I started setting up, and all of a sudden, me and Dan were texting each other saying, oh, the wind was supposed to be out of here. And now it's switched to, completely different. And I just had to pull my sticks down and move. And I did a semicircle around the area. It happened to be a scrape, and work back and just switch spots. It was only a spike that came in, but it wound up being an off wind for the spike because there was that 90-degree switch. And if I would have stayed where I was thinking, okay, it might change, you just have to be, for me, I had to be willing to just pull up stakes and move a little bit. Now, eventually that little buck came into the scrape, and then he worked across, and he could smell where I walked and did that semicircle around the scrape. But I had him dead to rights. It just he wasn't the guy that put down the chest high rub. He was the guy that put the knee high rub down.
Yeah, that's a good point though, Dave. I mean, be willing if you're in a spot where you feel like the wind's iffy or something's wrong. Like being mobile is important at that particular time, especially if you can pick a tree out real quick and be up and be down and back up in 30 minutes.
You don't really have to be right over the scrapes and rubs either. I mean, you just have to be where the deer travels in reach of it. And a lot of times I just get the feeling, when you find these clusters of scrapes and rubs, they seem to be where that wind swirls. It seems to be where they're smelling something going on, because they do everything based on their nose. And it just seems like where those sections are, where all that sign is, just it seems to be like the thermal spot where everything comes together, and you need to be out of that spot and off to the edge of it, kind of. Yeah. In a lot of cases.
And something else that can help is test out your height. Like sometimes if you may at 10 feet, maybe different wind than at 20 feet.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something else that you can kind of play with if you have the time to. And then the fact of the matter is sometimes it ain't perfect, and sometimes you still kill one, or sometimes it ain't perfect and they blow you and they run to the next county. It's just that's part of it.
A lot of times I'm sitting on a just off wind and I'm taking a gamble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're thinking, man, I'm gonna have to get the arrow in this thing quick if it comes in. But sometimes those are the hunts where I kill a big one.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go home saying I ain't ever doing that again, but then I do it again in 2 weeks.
Right. Here's a question for you guys. Do you carry a different gun for drives than stand hunting? If so, what's the difference?
I do.
I started this year.
So I carry an AR when we're doing, mostly when we're doing drives, and because it holds more ammo, and because it's shorter, lighter. I get through the cattails well with it. and I take the 30-06 when I stand hunt. It's nice precision when a deer's walking out, when it's, I got a little more range. How about you guys?
That's exactly what I do, Dan. Well, actually, I should say this year is the first year with the AR, and I got to say it is awesome for
It's an
driving.
awesome driving tool, yeah.
You can find those deer in the scope in a hurry. In fact, opening day, Jeff, you kind of had the issue with your 30-06. You had a shot on a deer where you couldn't get her in the scope, or if you did, it was tough to find her.
Yeah, she was so close to me, I just couldn't get her in the scope. And had I had the AR, I think it would have been a different story. Just more maneuverable too, like they said. You can swing on them a lot quicker and get acquisition quicker.
Yeah, the other thing I would add too to that with the AR is the recoil isn't there, so I feel like you're able to stay on target, a little better than you would be at 30-06. Drive.
And nowadays with the with like Nosler bullets and stuff, they got some really good ammo that knocks deer down pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would say,
and you yield more meat that I've noticed.
Yeah, right. I would say, for me, I was just using that, like I said, my grandpa's 30-30, and for when you're actually driving, and if you're in a relatively tight area on a stand with just iron sights, to me, there's nothing wrong with that, right? That has put down tons of deer over the centuries.
If you like the bigger rifles, a 30-30 lever action rifle is a really good drive rifle.
Yeah, and there's not much recoil either. It's super handy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not real long distance like when you're stand hunting or anything, but it's a nice maneuverable gun and it holds a lot of ammo. And
but even on the same drive, the same day, if I was sitting in the ladder in a big open expanse like Dan's brother-in-law where he tagged one from 200 yards, I wouldn't have been able to do it with that gun.
Right.
All right. Dan or anybody, how often do you see deer bed several hundred yards in a swamp with no islands nearby? He's hunting in northern Michigan. He says he sees runs going a few hundred yards through a thick tamarack swamp on the map.
Yeah, they might be out there, but there's probably going to be some sort of structure if it's mature deer. When you go in tamarack swamps, you'll literally find beds everywhere. You'll find them on every hump that's dry.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be confusing. But what you will find is that mature bucks will still pick certain areas in that swamp. And usually it has to do with structure. So just like if you're bass fishing, it's an edge, it's an island, it's a little bit rised up. You might not hardly even be able to see anything with your eyes, but if you look from a distance, you'd see, oh, okay, well, that's a different kind of tree cover there or a different kind of vegetation. Because it can be 7-8 inches higher of elevation will change everything when you're almost at water level. I have found spots in those tamarack swamps where I can't even figure out what's different, but every time a mature buck ends up in that spot. So you kind of got to scout the sign and stuff and figure out where those deer are living and look for the mature bucks and mature buck sign, because it'll be isolated in that swamp, but it's usually going to have to do with structure. But I do find them in the middle of those swamps, real remote back, but it usually has to do, again, with structure.
All right, let's finish with one more question here. This is from Zeke, the little guy that called in, Dan, and you got the hat from him.
I almost wore his hat. I was wearing it earlier.
Oh, really? He wants to know, when did you become the big buck serial killer? When did you start killing bigger bucks versus average basket rack bucks?
Oh, man, I thought that was from birth.
Yeah. That's not a tattoo on my rear end. That was actually that's a birthmark.
Oh, gosh.
I would say in my 20s, I started really knocking down big bucks on a regular basis.
But you had You had that in
I
your
think
mind,
everybody has
though, right?
a peak in their life too. I don't really think people get it, but I think you've got a period of time in your life that's about 10 years, maybe 15, where you really have a peak period of you've got that boyish energy, and you have that you're man enough to be able to dedicate it to hunting or whatever. And there's a peak period of your life when you're really good at this stuff. I mean, when you get to my age, you don't have as much energy, you don't have as much drive, you don't have you don't have that anything to prove anymore. Those young guys like Josh's age,
it takes a lot longer to recover
mind
too.
killing something, he's going to kill it.
Yeah,
Zeke
or
probably at the prime age, he's got to get out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Put the time in.
Yeah, you could do that. Like, you're probably right, Dan. If you're talking about like the public land, doing things kind of the hard way, or a lot of guys your age, Dan, just spend more money on it, to kill big ones.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
So, which is fine,
One of my cousins is a great hunter, and he's done very well for himself in life after starting with nothing but a bucket and a broom of tar, and now he has a big company. And he said to me after talking to him about hunting, he's got an amazing trophy room with just about everything you can imagine. And I've been telling him, some of this beast style hunting, and he's like, you should just spend $1,500 and get a lease. It's like,
yeah,
well, you're probably right, but
yeah, that's another thing. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
It's funny because Eric and I were talking a little bit about this different areas, and I got a friend up in Buffalo County and
that's where he's got a spot. He's got land up there.
Yeah. Eric and I kind of had the same philosophy, and that's great. And everybody can, I don't begrudge anybody for how they do, but doing it this way for us, it's I guess the reward is different for us. The challenge is different. The challenge is different. The reward is different. And I think Eric, you'd agree.
For me, it's kind of addictive, right? I had a buddy that helped me learn, right, and he said, just spend, sit in the woods. Eventually, something like we said before, will walk past, and I just couldn't do that. So when I found the beast, and then Dan's scouting workshops and all that stuff, it was like, no, this is more me, right? I got to be on the move and finding stuff. And a lot of, again, that same buddy was like, why do you do that? You're not getting anything. And well, now I'm starting to get stuff. So
it's no different than high school. A thrill is in the chase.
Yep, it is.
When you're chasing a woman down, it's the same thing.
Yep.
I got good friends that they talk to beasts. They say they're beasts. They want to go do the beast stuff, but when it comes down to it, they just keep going to the same property and the same stands, and well, that spot's too far, this spot's too much work, when really just what makes me successful at my age is I just say, well, I'm just going to do it, and I just make myself go and do it no matter what it takes, no matter what the work is.
Mm-hmm.
You really just
go ahead, Eric. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, it really does have to come from within. You have to have that want, you have to have that drive, and you have to have that passion. And I don't think that can really be taught. I think it just has to be there.
Yep. Yeah, I think Zeke has that.
Can't be taught or bought.
Yeah,
the kid that have it inside.
The kid that asked Zeke, he seems like he really has a passion for hunting. And like, man, if I could tell him one thing, is like, and he probably I think he's only 6, but it's like, buddy, like also like with deer hunting, comparison is the thief of happiness. Like, don't compare yourself to Dan or anybody else you see on TV, because you're not them.
Yep.
And me or Dan could kill 4 150-inch deer this year, and someone would say we should have waited for a 170-inch deer. I mean, we get it every time we kill a deer. Dan's 100, that giant deer you killed last year, that wasn't good enough. And you can't let that kind of stuff, people's judgment of you or keyboard warriors really take away your happiness, or your cousin or your buddy or whatever that's telling you, what you should shoot or what's supposed to make you happy. So
that's a really good point, and that's almost one way of answering that question, right? when should you start doing that, or when do you start killing big? When do you really want to do it, right? When are you, if you're enjoying what you're doing, maybe there's no reason to change those basket racks. But if all of a sudden you sit in your mind, oh, I want to do that, then do it. And I think what your point, Josh, was don't worry about what other people think. I know it's hard, when you're a little, when you're a young guy like Zeke, but don't worry about what people say on YouTube. Don't worry about what you read. You got to be you. And it's tough when you're little to hear that and know what that means. But as you get older, you gotta find your own path.
And I would tell him, just enjoy the journey, man. He's young. It's going to come with time and experience, and enjoy every step of it. Because when you get, Dan and I age old, it's still fun, but man, it takes a lot more effort. But he's got a lot of good times ahead of him.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And it's good. I'm glad. It's good to hear somebody that young this excited about it.
Yep. I think everybody here is probably a little bit jealous of Zeke. He's just getting ready to do all the fun stuff that we've all passed up already, So
that's awesome. He's got some great tools. I know obviously his dad is super active in it. I know he's called in a few times. So that's great that he has that mentor, but just now the ability to learn, and the knowledge that's out there, if he wants to soak it up, is kind of unparalleled from what it used to be. You don't have to have some guy that was your dad or a friend or whatever that really knew how to do it. You can learn a lot of stuff, but getting in the woods and just having fun is number one, and the rest will follow.
Yep, for sure. All right, guys, we've been on here for over an hour and a half, so this was a fun one. I like getting these big groups.
Yeah, it was a good time. Thanks for having us on.
Appreciate it.
I don't know if everybody else liked it.
Everybody.
But,
yeah. People have to leave the comments on how they liked it, but I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I had a good time.
I'm always nervous about getting a whole bunch of people on because it can get a little jumbled, but I think we did a good job not talking over each other and stuff. So, anyways, everybody enjoy your family tomorrow or whatever.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
We'll see you guys next week.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.